We are going to talk about my thoughts on Runaways Season 2, Episode 4, Old School. The episode is rated TV-14, so this video there will be spoilers for the show so far, and potentially anything and everything MCU and adjacent leading up to, including when this episode first premiered, and another episode I love. They are 2 for 14, but, at least we're finally there. Yeah, and it's 2 in a row. So maybe this is, maybe from here on out, I will be able to love every single one of these episodes. This episode does one of those things that I love about comic book media, and that you, in my experience at least, find works better in the ones that are the original books and then the adaptations that are longer than movies. I'm not sure I've seen it in one of the games, but I could imagine it could work there. But otherwise, these shows, just Topher is an enigma. Like by the end of the episode, we know, more certainly, and definitely enough for this episode because I'm really excited to find out more. But I also feel like like if we didn't find out about the drug thing, I think it would be too little. And because of the show having established all the regular characters, we can watch them all react to Topher. And it all feels, at least to me, in character, consistent with what we've seen so far. And yeah, it challenges them in ways because they're not, like, they're trying to work as a unit, certainly, but it doesn't quite always go that way. And with Topher, we can, poke a little bit at the various rifts. And I think that does cover the overarching. Yeah, so we're going to go scene by scene. Yeah, for right away in the episode, we see how they're all, asking different questions, making different statements. And I love the fact that, so various ones, some of them say they trust him, some of them say they don't, and such. If I recall correctly, the first thing that Nico doesn't say anything, if I'm recalling correctly. The first thing she does is, cone of silence. Was that a Get Smart reference? Wasn't that what that was called? That spy show, spy comedy satire parody show? Whatever. I think I actually, come to think of it, it might have been. I literally only realized that as I said the words out loud, but I don't know. I guess by this point, didn't they make like a newer version? Maybe that's what Nico's watched. I feel like it's super likely that she watched a show, you know, several decades old by the time she was born. I don't know. For her age, I mean, it's more unusual as all. But yeah, and yeah. So yeah, even if she did say something before, it's certainly one of the first things that she does, and nobody else even thought to do it. That is once again something that maybe Tina would also have done. It's yeah. And let's see, we have the yeah, and after a little bit of conversation, I like the POV shot, making it clear, yeah, for sure, he can't hear a word they're saying. But yeah, he uses the drug and, smashes his way out. And, that does tell us, the audience, that, he doesn't just have the strength that Molly does, but we don't know for sure if that means that he has ill intent towards them, you know, or if it is, yeah, um, or not. and we don't know where it comes from and what it is. And Nico positions those questions near the end of the episode, and that's obviously something we're going to learn more about in an upcoming episode. I can imagine it'll be the next. And I definitely do think that it is related to the, yeah, that stuff that gave Molly her powers. And yeah, I wonder how widespread this is, how many Runaways have. I guess I should call them something else, because Runaways on this show are our main characters. But yeah, how many people have access to this? And yeah, he bursts his way out, and the eyes, and yeah, like that definitely means that there is some connection between Topher and Molly, and Molly loves the idea that this is indeed, a relative, long lost relative. And yeah, we can understand why. Like, genuinely, it's great that she has the Runaways, or the rest of the Runaways, but we could appreciate why she feels a need for more, like, of her original family. This is something that a number of adopted, young people struggle with. I think that does get us to, let's see. So there's what was the other thing that I wanted to say about? Yeah, and so, they decide that, they're gonna have him sleep near old Lace. And I like the little thing of the, oh, right, I think, isn't that also where Chase acts like the protective older brother of Molly? That was also great. But yeah, we have Gert being, doing that pet owner thing where, don't call my pet an it, and genders it appropriately. And yeah. And we find out not terribly long after that he tunneled his way out of there. And he then says, I had to get out so that he could bring them food, because, like, he did return and he brought food. But is that because he cares about them, or is that because he wants, because by the end of the episode, it is clear he thinks that they are using the drug that he's using, and he wants some of theirs. But that doesn't automatically mean that he's, like, evil. He just has the wrong idea about this situation. That's the thing. Like, a lot of people don't realize, and I guess I should say, I don't think anyone that I know personally is an addict, just, for legal purposes. I don't know. I think I've met at least one person who later became an addict after I no longer had contact with them. But what I'm basing the following on is what I've heard from former addicts and people who knew or know addicts and people who studied it and such. But not all addicts. Yeah, let's see. I'm gonna see if I can get the terminology right also. So addict means that it's out of your control. Not all users are addicts. Some people have it under control. And we don't see him struggle during the episode with the, I don't know if you're hearing the beeping, my laundry's done. I'll take it out of the oven later. But yeah, that was a joke, just for legal purposes. Anyway, yeah, yes, he seems to have it together. He might just be like, because that is thing, like, a number of users form communities with each other. It doesn't mean that they are, like, trying to take advantage of anyone. Because the thing is, if he thinks that the only way to get the powers that he knows Molly has is to use drugs, then, to him, from his perspective, they must already know about the drugs, and he doesn't need to say it. I mean, let's take a completely different, you know, um, environment. When two people in Hollywood meet who both know the other's work, they don't necessarily immediately say, let's work together, or let's, see if we can't get someone, maybe both of them have a person or multiple people, or just the concept in mind that, maybe someone I know can work with someone kind of thing. They don't necessarily say it right away. It's implied. He thinks that he's walking up to other users and just saying, hey, let's share. Sharing is caring. That doesn't mean that he's trying to take advantage at all. So that is, yeah, I really appreciate that. Yeah, I don't know. I'm almost, it's almost too bad that I feel like I'm probably gonna know whether he's, you know, yeah, whether he is going to try to take advantage of them or not in at least one upcoming episode, unless they drop the plot line or something. But yeah, right now I'm really loving that. I genuinely am not sure, because like this is an issue that is more complicated, and it's great to teach young people that, because like you shouldn't trust just anyone, really, under almost all circumstances. You should always, make sure that you know, yeah, to take care of yourself. Which doesn't mean like be selfish, just like, be careful. But the yeah, when it comes to drug use, for a long time, because of the war on drugs, there was this idea that it was essentially treated as if being a user was almost like carrying a some what's it called, like a virus or something, that if people got too close to you, that would just automatically ruin your life. And this was, of course, one way that the people behind the war on drugs made sure that the people, that users were as socially isolated as possible, because the war on drugs was about power and profit. I guess isn't it? Now the yeah, and he, because yeah, one of the things is him like tunneling his way out. He could have tried going up against Old Lace. Like he might have won with his super strength, but he chose not to hurt a living being. But is that because of empathy, or is it just because he still wants, it would take him a long time to search that entire ruined mansion, which is kind of poetic. I agree with Molly. Yeah. And, him tunneling out, like, who likes being in captivity? Of course he's not going to be comfortable with that. But it does also mean that they cannot contain him. There's nothing they can really do. Because, like, Cone of Silence didn't work. Walls and Old Lace didn't work. Maybe they're just not meant to have captives. And I think that does... Let's see, there's at least one more thing that I really wanted to make sure to say. Let's see. Yeah, there's some... Yeah, that's when, so he's got the breakfast ready. And yeah, one of the parts that really got to me was the part where, so Molly's like, maybe we're long-lost relatives. And you see just like the look on his face as he like... Because again, I don't know if this, this doesn't necessarily mean he has evil intent. Like maybe he thinks that he's just able to help, this young person feel better. Like most of the time, I believe we should tell pretty much everyone any truth that is not literally like dangerous. But I do appreciate sometimes, I try not to do it myself, but sometimes people who are talking to someone younger than them, will, you know, yeah, will tell a lie in order to, protect them, because clearly Molly needs this. But again, like, is it just so that so to be clear, I'm not talking about like the sexual kind, but is he grooming her? Is he trying to build trust with her in a way that and because the thing is, like, if she thinks that they are long lost relatives for a while, and then after a while she no longer needs to believe that, and then he tells her the truth, like, it might upset her, but it's not necessarily going to undo all that time where she felt less alone. Yeah, I think yeah, and so, he's got the, because like, they don't look that much alike, and she's just going off the fact that, the eyes and the strength that comes with it, and them both speaking Spanish, that's really not that much to go on, but or go off. And that's IT 101. Yeah, so yeah, they've, he's got the food, and they ask, did you steal this? And he says that he asked, and he got, day old pastries and all this stuff. And that again is the thing, like, life on the streets. Once again, what I've heard from people who do, mostly through, like, YouTubes and studies and such. I don't know anyone like that, and I've never been on the streets or an addict, but or a user. But the let's see, there are some people who will, you know, steal food, which is understandable if you can't, if you don't have money to buy it. And under capitalism, that is very, very difficult under a number of circumstances, including being homeless. But there are also some, I mean, they mentioned the soup kitchen, just like, yeah, they mention it again this very episode, maybe he's getting it from that kind of, yeah. And let's see, yeah, and they make the point, this isn't poison, I saw him eat some of it. That is also a good, if you're not sure if you trust someone, the food that they brought is, yeah. Let's see, I think that does pretty much get us to the let's see, uh yeah, I think that's when so Pride have the meeting. And yeah, we have the point about, Catherine feels she's reality checking Jeffrey, and he feels she betrayed him, and certainly, she didn't tell him beforehand. And let's see, yeah, I appreciated the couple of points about hypocrisy. She points out, he talks about the code of the streets, but they met when she was, his defense attorney, because he had just killed his boss. So, killing Darius was, yeah. And we also have right, and to be clear, I'm not just talking about, like, oh, I don't know. I hopefully by this point it's clear. I try to have empathy towards people without a lot of power. It's very true of, like, many other cultures, including incredibly powerful people. Like, some of the most powerful cishet white men, today and throughout history, have been, some of the biggest betrayers, and pretended that no, there's a code, there's a specific way you have to do this. And and sometimes the code is also horrifying. Remember, Martin Shkreli only got in trouble when he cost rich people a lot of money. It wasn't that he was, it wasn't the stone cold fact that he was taking advantage of poor people. Now, I think that does bring us to the, let's see, the other thing. Yeah. The other time was that Gert doesn't trust Topher, and she admits that she's a hypocrite. And that is, again, like, so far, I am still, I think they've been doing better on her character recently. And it's not just the fact that I share quite a few of her politics. I would take issue with the characterization, the way that they've, for so much of the show, made her character kind of purposefully annoying, like not purposefully for her, but purposefully by the writers. So annoying because, like, I would take issue with that if it was like a conservative, you know. But it is true that it can be difficult to not be a hypocrite in that circumstance. She's like, she wants to help everyone, but when she is face to face with someone who she doesn't know if she can trust, yeah, she is, what does she say? Her anxiety is winning by a lot, and yeah, that is, that's something that we on the far left, I mean, I hesitate to say need to be honest about. It's something I'm glad we are so honest about, because it is one of those things, like, you're not going to help people by putting yourself in a circumstance where you're close to someone who needs your help, but you just don't trust them at all. You can actually do much more harm than good like that. So, if you genuinely are in a situation where you just can't, I mean, you can help in other ways. You can donate money, for example. Maybe help spread the word. But if you're working directly with, interacting face to face, a lot of people in need of help will be able to tell, oh, this person really doesn't trust me, and that's, yeah, that can make things much worse. Now, yeah, I also I appreciated the some of the other Pride, they're like, well, thank you, Cat. That is it it worked. They got the result that had yeah. And I appreciated several secrets revealed, because obviously now they know that the Wilders had contact with Alex and didn't tell the rest of them. Sharing is caring. But they're also not the only ones keeping secrets, and yeah, just I thought that worked well. Both groups, both the Pride and the Runaways, are keeping secrets from each other. And in this episode, we see that apparently if you are a runaway and you're making up a story to keep a secret, pretty good. Like, I guess it's 2/3 chance that you're gonna claim that it's a job. Which, I mean, technically, Alex did come home with money. Carolina ended up turning down the money, I think, but she almost got a bunch of money. And I think that's around where we see Jonah, working on the thing, and the I like him saying, this might be a little loud. Does that, like, translate to, like, inside the simulation? Is the doctor, Chase's dad, is he, like, hearing something loud? I mean, I guess based on the time period, it would maybe be, like, really loud music, maybe, or something, like maybe a malfunctioning jukebox. I don't know. Anyway, I think that does, yeah, and we see him call Carolina, and we do see, she doesn't take the call, but she does listen to the message and then text him and not tell Nico about this whole thing. But yeah, and I mean, it is a clever, cover. She's gonna take take Polaroids with girls in was it a Hollywood Boulevard, and they're no longer fugitives, and it's not like their parents go near Hollywood Boulevard, which I really do appreciate when I've been fortunate with my recent media diet to consume a lot of this, where they'll take little jabs at the rich, because yeah, I guess if their parents were willing to go near Hollywood Boulevard, they might actually find, but of course it is just a story. And I think that does bring us to, yeah, so and I appreciate them not doing a annoying throwaway joke when Chase and Alex are talking about the tech, because Alex is spouting a bunch of, actually I think it wasn't, it more or less, I'm struggling to remember, I think they did okay on not making it just technobabble. Like, it sounded at the time, from what I recall, as if it made pretty decent sense. But yeah, the let's see, the other thing was that so Alex explains it, and notes that if they take Tofu to school on this, then they can, that's going to get them closer. And I appreciated them, discussing the whole thing. And he, what did he say? He got free vouchers or something, and they're driven there. I appreciate, last time we saw multiple cars, Gert made a joke about, or they had a joke where Gert was annoyed about, like, the pollution, which, like, once again, like, why are we joking about that? That is, like, one of the most serious issues we're dealing with today. Like, it's not bad to bring it up, but to do so in this kind of dismissive way is just, yeah. But once again, that's a point in this episode's favor. I think that does. I appreciated Carolina, telling Jonah, like, she wants to know everything, and she wants to know it now. She doesn't want money, and she's only there talking to him because of the information. And yeah, so we have the two scientists going to the the crater, the hole, and not crater, the hole, and the dig site. And that's the work of I'm afraid I do not remember her name, but the Gibborim, leader. And I also thought they did a decent job of toning down. We do still have comedy with the two scientists, and it is obviously somewhat silly that they're standing there saying, we have to kill someone within earshot of these guards who, like, I feel like, isn't that... they have one job. Okay, maybe they have many jobs, like Tony from Drawfee, but still. And and so they, investigate, and they, cause necrosis with the serum. So this will kill not Bill, but Jonah, if they can get it into him. But he also, by the end of the episode, knows that they know something about, they were there at the hole, and they're why there was another earthquake. And I also really appreciate that, because, like, having Jonah just come right out and say that was not supposed to happen. He was expecting more quakes, but not that one. So it definitively is because they, so the alien life form down there is reacting like that. And this is also a really cool way to show, we see a tiny bit more of the alien, but it's not demystifying, because I don't think they want to go all the way with the alien just yet. They don't want to show us what the aliens really are like, because this is some liquid from the alien life form. It doesn't tell us anything about what the alien life form looks like, just that, okay, so they don't bleed human blood, or let's see, it's mammal. They don't bleed mammal blood, certainly. And it also, I don't know that it looks particularly like any earthly, like I've seen, images of what it looks like when, someone like looks at the insides of various creatures from right here on Earth for various for scientific purposes, and didn't really look particularly like that. So this is definitely they're underlining how alien it is with that, and I think that is when the so yeah, they go into the school, the Runaways and Topher, and yeah, very clever that because the plan was good. I think it would have worked, but the quake, of course, messes things up, and so the rest, yeah, at first it's just Topher going in, but then the rest of them, have to go in as well, and understandably, Gert tries to go for her medication, and it's again, I really appreciate like so many of the problems that she's dealing with right now. It is part of it is that she feels ashamed. She's upset about she feels like she's being a burden by needing this medication, and that is something some people who need medication feel like that, and that is you know one of the issues with capitalism, this thing of like, well, you as a human being only have the value that you can produce for some rich wage theft jerk that is just gonna get another super yacht or car elevator and not care while other people literally die from lack of access to resources. Because like if she had told the others that she really feels a need to get these meds, maybe she could have gone with one of the others and together, like, because they could have avoided the situation if one of them had, let's see, I mean, because yeah, she ends up leaving without the meds at all. If she had been there with someone and that person had managed to distract the nurse, so Gert could go sneak away the meds. Like, yeah, their parents would have found out, but like all their parents know is that they went to the school, and now they know that, but they also but Gert didn't end up with the drugs, and she also didn't tell the others that that's what was going on there. She even claimed that no one there saw her, which I also feel like the others are gonna find out. I can imagine in an upcoming episode, you know, Pride and Runaways will be face to face, and one of the Pride parents will say, Gert talked to the nurse. That's how we knew you were at the school, or something like that, And yeah, it worked really well as this like gradual escalation of the stakes. It's already tense when they're having Topher go into the school when he doesn't even go there, and yeah, like it's already kind of you know let's see, I think technically is that trespassing? I forget. But you can get in trouble if you are in a school that you shouldn't be in, and this is a expensive school. It's an area with a bunch of rich kids. That even more so, especially if they find out, oh, this is a homeless person, they are gonna be incredibly abusive towards him. And I'm not saying that he couldn't necessarily fight his way out, but could he do it without hurting people? But then the quake means that they have to, what is he going to do? He kind of has to stay out there. If he insists on going back inside and he's spotted, what if just one person is like, do I know you? Where are you really? Is like, especially if it's like a teacher or someone else who works at the school. And I mean, we see that with Gert, you know, the nurse is like, I'm supposed to be notified when a traumatized kid returns to school, you know. Right, and we get a mention of fake news, which yeah, it's really messed up to think. But even in, you know, the episode's like 7.5 years old now. Even back then, that was major thing. And it's so much worse now. It's yeah, trying not to think about it. I think that does get us to the let's see. While at least one of my synapses is firing, trying to remember that, I will briefly recommend some YouTube. I gotta real quick find, so here we go. Yeah, so Lily Simpsons, I watched every Elon Musk cameo. Really glad that Lily branched out past the original. Tax Resistance 101 by Legia Miller. Why Are U.S. Catholics Like That by The Cavernacle. Let's see. I know I have at least one. Yeah, Edgier Than Thou, Critical Drinker fixes a movie he hasn't even seen. Matt Bernstein, The Truth About DoorDash Grandma. There we go. But yeah, you know, so they, yeah, and eventually Pride shows up because, you know, the call about, you know, and yeah, genuinely, like, this nurse is just trying to do her job, you know. And I think, right, I also appreciate that the bit with, you know, was it like gluten-free consumable, you know, that also, they didn't make a huge deal out of that. It's just, you know, Gert says it and walks off, and that's it, you know. Like, I feel like earlier episodes, season 1 would have had like an endless discussion about that, you know, and, you know, so someone would have said, wait, I thought, didn't they find out gluten is good for you? And then Gert would have said, oh, excuse me for trying to save the planet, or something like that, you know. Just, yeah, if you've watched season 1, I don't think you can, I mean, feel free to try to argue that point, but yeah. Anyway, yeah, and we have the thing about, like, well, the door is locked, and you know, at this point in the episode, they're trying to avoid anyone knowing that they were ever there, and, you know, Chase says he knows someone who stole a key and still has it, and knows that they're not going to be outside of the school in front of everyone else, and it is Eiffel, you know, and that's another really effective wrinkle. Also appreciated the point about, you know, so because of Gert, this bathroom is now gender neutral. And Alex says, I love Gert. Which is sweet. You should tell her that. But only girls use that bathroom. And that is something that, you know, so listen, it's very important for me to underline. I understand not, okay, let's see. Not everyone who is against gender neutral bathrooms is transphobic. There are, you know, some are not thinking about, like, the, yeah. I understand why a number of cis women do not want cis men in the bathrooms. You know, my issue comes when you claim that a trans woman is equivalent to a cis man, which is just, you know what, I will simply direct you to video, you know, check out videos on the subject by Jammy Dodger, because this video is already long. Let's see. So but yeah, it is. So I'm not saying that I don't feel comfortable personally saying, you know, every bathroom should be gender neutral or something like that. I do think there is value in having gender-neutral bathrooms, I understand the arguments that says that the places that have gender-neutral bathrooms should also have gender-specific bathrooms, But, I do believe that at least some should exist. And it is worth noting, as this episode does, you can say, okay, this bathroom is now gender neutral. That doesn't mean everyone's going to treat it as such, and that is, because that's kind of a different issue. Like, one thing is, what are the rules? And I'm a big believer in rules are meant to be understood, and if you see that they don't make sense, then broken. I don't think rules are inherently meant to be either broken or followed without exception. But yeah, Chase goes in there, and Eiffel doesn't mind. She makes a comment about time having passed and such, and the yeah, still don't love the characterization of her, but at least this time they had something that I felt was more interesting with her than pretty much anything with her in season 1. And once again, I do appreciate, like, yeah, people like that do exist. And before I say, girls are so, women are just terrible. No, there are men who are like that and significantly worse. The people screwing over all of us, the planet, throwing away the future. Right now, a huge chunk of them are cishet white men. The ones who have tremendous wealth. I'm not saying every individual cishet white man. But the let's see, yeah, she says she's willing to let him have the key, but she wants something in return. And by the end of the episode, we don't know what it is, but Gert knows that the two of them were alone together in a bathroom, and that he left with the key that Eiffel had. Or at least she knows, oh, actually, I guess it might complicate things even further if she doesn't know that that's for the key. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I'd like to think you know what? Maybe I'll regret this later. But right now, I'm vouching for, I don't think Chase did anything like that would constitute cheating, and I have a broad definition of that. I think it was something else. Yeah. But of course, Gert, she's already struggling with anxiety and insecurity. It's gonna be a yeah. There's friction there. I think that does get us, let's see. Okay, so where does that leave us? That leaves us with I know it. It's right on the tip of my tongue. Yeah, so they're able to, yeah, they end up having to just flee because Pride gets there. And I was a tiny bit worried that we're gonna have a scene that didn't really lead to anything, but turns out Topher did manage to get the yeah. And by the end of the episode, the right, also, like, Jonah said he will tell Carolina everything, and he revealed the hand, and I appreciate, so earlier, like, he was hiding it through the glove, but not necessarily from her. Like, they were in public before. Now it's just the two of them, and the hole is right there, and he immediately takes the glove off and isn't trying at all to hide it from her. And so I don't think that she too is dying, because she has only been alive for 16 years. He's the one who's been alive for a very long time. But it does seem like, yeah, he's generally going to tell her more about the aliens, and if she comes back to the Runaways and has information about the aliens that they, don't know how she got, that's also going to be a point of contention. And I mean, I wouldn't completely rule out, maybe there's even going to be a thing, like, could there be something about, like, if they do significant enough harm to, because, like, the two scientists just grabbed a little bit and then necrosis that, and even grabbing that little bit got this kind of intense reaction. I kind of miss playing Uncharted Horror. But yeah, the could there be something about, like, if they harm the aliens down there, like, I mean, we know that there's a connection between the aliens down there and Jonah. Could there be a thing of, like, if you do significant harm to the ones down there, that would also harm Carolina, maybe, or some kind of, or maybe she will end up feeling kinship to the aliens and thus not want them hurt. There are different routes that they could go or might have gone. I appreciate every episode of the show has already aired. And yeah, Nico confronts Topher about the drug. She found his stash. And he genuinely, like, he doesn't even say, give me back my stash. He says, is that yours or mine? And yeah, really looking forward to finding out more about that. I like the pun of the title and the one that Gert uses during the earthquake left her shook. And I think that does pretty much. Let's see. So the One thing I also thought helped with the Eiffel representation here was the fact that we don't end up spending that much time with her, because, like, if they're determined to make her this much of a walking stereotype, I think that's probably just the best way to do it. So there's an earthquake and she takes a selfie and it's gonna put a hashtag, which, like, yeah, and she's suggesting it, so it's not like it's trending. She's trying to, make a hashtag trend that is based on this earthquake that, for all she knows, harmed people. Like, that's, yeah. They definitely don't have the highest opinion of her or people like her. But the show is also very critical of the powerful, so that's good, at least. Yeah, I think that might just about cover. Let's see. Yeah, I feel like there's at least one more thing. Okay, I'm just real quick gonna mentally fast forward through the episode and see if I can recall something else that is. Let's see. Oh, right, yeah. There's a bit with Pride talking to, yeah, the thing, the threat of firing her, and then the point made, she's a volunteer. That was kind of, because, like, that's, yeah, she likes to use power to accomplish situations, and she doesn't really know what to do when she's in a situation where she doesn't really have anything she can threaten the person with, because, like, at the end of the day, threatening to get them fired, that's something that is not gonna, especially if she doesn't end up actually doing it. Like, if she does end up doing it, she'll make up some excuse, maybe there'll be a lawsuit, it'll probably be settled out of court. But if she threatens with more than that, and this person, yeah, that's if she threatens to do something that is more illegal than firing someone without due cause. Although, I don't know, in America now, I guess, is that still the case, or can you just throw away people like they're garbage without any, anyway, let's see, the other thing was that but yeah, and he does give some information, and I like Robert pointing out, I would have given you 100, and the guy's like, I would have stayed for 25.